All right. These lights are bright. Good morning, everyone. We're excited to be here in the Dev Zone to kick off Dreamforce 2014 with you. We have an exciting session for you entitled Using Heroku Connect to Drive Powerful Customer Interactions. So it wouldn't be Dreamforce without the safe harbor slide. So we'll go ahead and pop that up. Hopefully that's your first. We are going to be talking about a Salesforce product called Heroku Connect. So we do need to show that to you. My name is Joe Ferraro. I'm the CTO at Mavens Consulting. I've been building Salesforce and Heroku applications since about 2005. And this is my 8th Dreamforce. I'm really excited to be with you guys here in San Francisco this year. And with me, the esteemed gentleman, my colleague, Sam Rosen, who's a technical architect at Mavens. And this is his second Dreamforce, actually. You excited, Sam?
Oh, yeah.
You look really excited, actually. So, who is Mavens? So we are the preferred life sciences implementation partner for Salesforce.com and Viva customers. We have about 50 Salesforce and Heroku consultants around North America and Europe. And just this year at Dreamforce 2014, we have 11 Mavens in attendance speaking in 9 different technical sessions. So if you're interested in following our activity here at Dreamforce, you can follow the hashtag MavensDF14. Okay, so Sam, why don't we kick Dreamforce off right and talk a little bit about how we can use Heroku Connect to drive powerful customer interactions.
Thanks, Joe. So powerful interactions start with powerful experiences. And when we're talking about customer interactions, we need to focus on our users. And I think most of us would agree the best interaction is when you're going to one place. One place for information, one place for communication, whether you're talking to other users of the company, one place for support, and one place to buy other items from that company. Now, for an interaction to be truly an interaction, at one point your users are going to interact with your sales and support personnel. And they need to be at the top of their game, which means they need the best tools at their disposal. So that means they need Salesforce CRM and Service Cloud on the back end. So with this in mind, let's talk about our fictitious company, ShapeBite. So they build wearable technology, essentially fitness trackers. So they count calories, steps walked, floors climbed, all that good stuff, and they're really pretty cool. And they asked us to build a giant unified global application that does everything from firmware updates to support to building a digital community so you can share your ShapeBite scores and compete with your friends, whether they're 5 feet away or halfway around the world. So ShapeBite is a global company. Like many global companies, they divide the world into several regions. You have a US region, a European region, and Asia Pacific region. And each region has its own specialized sales and service personnel. And within each region, they have their own Service Cloud org. So the real question is, how are we going to build this single unified experience, but still push that data back to the proper Salesforce org on the back end seamlessly? And I'll have Joe tell you a little bit about that.
All right, so that sounds like a pretty interesting problem to solve. So we're going to take a few pieces of best-in-class technology to solve that issue. So we're going to talk about Heroku, we're going to talk about Ruby on Rails, and we're going to talk about AngularJS. So let's start off with the Heroku. So who's here familiar with Heroku or using Heroku? Okay, so for those who are not familiar with it, it's Salesforce's platform as a service offering. So it's a polyglot platform where you can run all different types of applications with various programming languages, various web frameworks. And what's nice about it is you can use it to scale your application on demand, basically. So declaratively provisioning what are called dynos, web dynos or worker dynos, to support your application as it scales. And it's great to use for customer-facing applications, public-facing applications that may require millions of users potentially. And what's nice about it, it features really tight integrations with Salesforce1, which is extremely important for ShapeBite, our global Salesforce customer. Our second piece of technology that we're going to focus on is Ruby on Rails. So this is an open source MVC framework, and over the last few years it's gained a lot of traction in the developer community because of its favor of convention over configuration. So it's very easy for developers to get up and running with an application, for example, that exposes a REST API. And it's also fast and easy to set up. And given the fact that ShapeBite already has Rails engineers, we're going to go ahead and use that technology. And last but not least, AngularJS. So this is an open source single page app framework supported and maintained by Google. And what's great about this is we can quickly prototype and build applications that have integrations with various REST APIs. So our first REST API that we'll be integrating with is the ShapeBite REST API. And what's nice about it is it has great community support, lots of packages, and continuous development. So those three technologies are great and all, and we will focus on those during the demo, but they really still don't solve this problem of this one-to-many relationship that we have. We would really like to build a single application that can integrate our account and our case data for ShapeBite Storefront from these disparate geographical Service Cloud organizations. Based on the technologies I've just described, I haven't really solved that issue. So we can't really tell ShapeBite that they have to run 3 different applications with 3 different web servers. Do we, Sam?
Probably a year ago, we would. It'd probably be the best solution. But now there's Heroku Connect. So for those of you in the audience who aren't familiar with Heroku Connect, it's essentially a point-and-click integration tool that at a really high level allows you to keep your Salesforce org in sync with a Heroku Postgres database. And this sync can be done in one direction from Salesforce to Heroku, or it can be done bidirectional, so updates in one will update the other. And that sync can be done evented, so it'll update in near real time on either side as data changes, or it can be done at a polling frequency, so every X minutes it'll sync over the changes. Now with a little bit of extra configuration, you can actually set Heroku Connect up to sync multiple Salesforce orgs to a single Heroku Postgres database. And that's exactly what we've done here. And when you do that, each org is put into its own Heroku Postgres schema, which you can kind of think of as a namespace. So an account table in org 1 won't interfere with an account table in org 2, and so on and so forth. So once we have the schemas, all we need to do is pull the data from the correct schema, given the correct region, and then put the data back in the correct schema, and Heroku Connect will handle the syncing for us. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we're going to put that data in the right spot. So remember, we have our Postgres database, and we have a US schema, and we have an EU schema. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our Rails API to map a US portal user directly to a US account. And when an EU user opens up an EU support ticket, it'll be mapped to an EU case. Once we save that data, Heroku Connect will do what it does so well, which is just pull that data directly into our proper Salesforce org. Now, we're going to get into a lot more detail and show you exactly how this works, but first I want to hand it back to Joe so he can kind of frame the entire solution.
Okay, that's awesome, Sam, thanks. So what we see now is what we've been trying to do is really simplify ShapeBite's web front strategy. So we have these 3 disparate geographically dispersed Service Cloud organizations. And what's nice about it is we can now go back to ShapeBite and say, okay, we have a single Heroku application running a Rails API, and we have an Angular app running on it. And given the fact that we have Heroku Connect running to integrate all these orgs, we have a single storefront application that can service ShapeBite's global customer base. So let's go ahead and see a demo. So in order to set the scene here, how many people here are international from outside the US? Okay. So what we want to show you here is, and if you didn't know this, we have a couple of really famous customers here at ShapeBite. We have Barack Obama, who is the US president, and Chancellor Angela Merkel from Germany. So they are both ShapeBite customers. Barack Obama, a newer customer. Angela Merkel has been a customer for a little while now. And what we want to show you is that with this single Heroku application running Rails on Angular, we're going to be able to log in, create accounts from both of these users, and show you that this is the same application, but it's going to intelligently route the cases back and forth depending on where they are. And that's all driven by Heroku Connect. All right. So let's head over to the demo. So here we have Barack Obama's desktop. And what you can see here is we have our ShapeBite application. So this is a Heroku application. Again, the Rails application running Angular. And we have Angela Merkel over here. So let's go ahead and log in. Like I said, Angela has been a ShapeBite customer. So let's go ahead and log in as Angela. Okay. Let's log into ShapeBite. And what you'll immediately see here is we're logged in. And we have a couple of options here in support. So we have our knowledge base that can be driven from Service Cloud. we have our support tickets, and we have the ability to submit a ticket. So let's go ahead and take a look at our support tickets. So what you'll see here is this is a reflection of the open cases inside Service Cloud for Angela in Germany. And we can see here that she's submitted 2 tickets. She's got an issue with her battery, and then she's got a question about whether the warranty covers water damage. All right, so let's take a look at this ticket here. So what you'll see here is that as we make this request, this information is being driven by the Rails API that's pulling from the Postgres database that's populated from Heroku Connect with real-time Service Cloud data. So we have this question here about whether the warranty covers water damage for taking the shape bite swimming. So let's go ahead and switch over to the Service Cloud console as an EU or EMEA Service Cloud agent at ShapeBite. So what you'll see here is we have our 2 cases that are in the Service Cloud console. So you see, does my warranty cover water damage, and the battery only lasts 2 hours. So as a Service Cloud agent, let's go ahead and open up this case. And I've been doing a little work on this case. I've used the knowledge base, used all the tools that Service Cloud gives me. And I'm going to go ahead and close this case, because unfortunately we don't support, or the warranty doesn't support water damage. So I'm going to set this to closed. Sorry, no can do. OK. Gmail is really annoying on Chrome. They just keep coming in. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. OK, so you'll see here that in the Service Cloud in the EU, we've gone and we've closed this particular case on whether the warranty covers water damage. So meanwhile, we have here in the US, Barack Obama has just recently purchased his ShapeBite. So he goes in, he goes to the same application, running the same Heroku app, Rails on Angular, and he needs to sign up. So go ahead and go to the sign up form here, and we'll populate the form. Okay. And what you'll notice here in this form is we have a couple important pieces of information. We have this region dropdown. So obviously we could do some geofencing, but for illustration purposes, we're showing here that we have the option to register here in the US, EU, EMEA, or APAC. And we also have this country. So that's going to allow us to make sure that Heroku Connect knows where to essentially tie this user and make sure that cases are intelligently routed based on the location. So we'll go ahead and register. And it's telling me we'll receive an activation instruction via email. So we'll just wait for that. Yep, there it is. OK. So I get a notification here to activate my new portal account. So I'll go ahead and click on that link. And there I am. I've activated. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here as Barack Obama. And we know that Barack Obama needs to submit a ticket. So he's a Fitness Pro customer, and he is having an issue charging. Cannot charge my new device. And he puts a little description here. Pretty busy guy. Would appreciate follow-up ASAP. Okay? So let's go ahead and submit that new ticket. Now, what we're doing with this form is we're actually creating a new row in the Postgres database, but Heroku Connect will actually sync that to the appropriate Service Cloud org. So let's go ahead over to the US instance of the Service Cloud, and you'll see that it reflects in real time the new case that Barack Obama has just created. And then last but not least, we can switch over here and take a look at Angela Merkel, refresh her list of cases here. If you remember, we closed that one case, and you'll see that the status now is closed. So it knows, based on the location of the user that's being logged into that single web application, where to intelligently route that case and have that reflected on the application based on the power of Heroku Connect. Mm-hmm. So in order to talk a little bit about how we're doing that with Heroku Connect, Sam's going to come up and show you the interface and walk us through that. So, Sam?
Perfect. So right now we have the Heroku dashboard opened up, and what I've done is I've favorited all components of this ShapeBite application. So we have the main application that runs in Dreamforce 2014, as well as 3 other sub-applications. Now, if we go into any of these applications, you'll notice all they have is Heroku Connect. They don't have any other thing. And let's take an actual look at Heroku Connect itself. So what we've done here is we've opened up the Asia Pacific, which is Dreamforce APAC. And we can see that we're syncing over these two tables, so account and case. We can see activity. At the moment, there's none. We can see the happy cloud icon telling us that Heroku Connect is fully functional. And if we click into Salesforce, we can see what objects we're bringing across, what mode they're in, read or write, whether it's evented or polled, and how much you'll use the API over 24 hours. If you want to add something new, maybe ShapeBite wants to add the contract, we can look up contract, select it. Maybe we want to bring over the account ID and billing city. Click continue, choose read only or read write. And if we click continue again, we would be presented with would you like to poll? And then it would start syncing our data and build our tables in real time. It is really that simple. Now, how do we get these different Heroku Connect applications to sync to a single database? Well, if we look at the database tab, you'll notice the last 3 digits of the database name. Now, just trust me, because Heroku Connect generates a lot of random database names, that the last 3 digits are unlikely to ever repeat. So last 3 digits, 539. If we go now and we take a look at Dreamforce US, see also some activity here, so we can see when data is written back and forth. But if we look at Dreamforce US, you'll notice that the database is the exact same, database 539. And how we set this up was we set the database environment variable in each of these 3 shell applications to point to the same database that sits within the Dreamforce 2014 application. Then, when Heroku Connect fires up, it'll ask you what schema you want to save all the changes and what schema you want Heroku Connect to operate in. Heroku Connect signs a contract at that point that it will only alter the schema that you select. So by selecting the US schema, it's within its own namespace. And in this case, by selecting the APAC schema, it's within its own namespace. So the Heroku Connect instances will not interfere with one another. So that's how we set up Heroku Connect to sync to multiple orgs on the back end. Now let's take a look at the actual code that makes this happen. So for those of you who are familiar with Rails, it's the idea of we have models. And most of the time, Rails controllers just work with models. And in our case, we're working with account and case. So we created what's called a unified account, which is just account, and we created a unified case. Now, the account actually has a database model backing it and stores your region, username, password, and an ID to the proper Salesforce account. So essentially, when a user logs in, we authorize against a single table, and then in the background, we load up the backing Salesforce account, which could be represented by any of these 3 models, US, EU, or Asia Pacific. And we do that by just doing a constant ties by tying account to the region selected. And then we can interact with this account in our controllers as if it's just a regular account, allowing the account to do all the mapping in the background for us. Likewise, unified case is nearly identical to account. The only difference is unified case is actually just a wrapper for case objects. It doesn't even have a backing database model. So it supports things like being used in a collection, so you can load a list, as well as the ability to load cases by different values. So you can load cases by the Ruby on Rails ID, because maybe it hasn't synced back to Salesforce and hasn't gotten the Salesforce ID yet, or you can load cases directly with the Salesforce ID. So again, we did this because we wanted one way to work with the Heroku Connect objects, and then allow Heroku Connect and these unified case and account objects to automatically do the shuffling for us so we don't have to think about it on the controller level. Now, I'm sure some of you here are probably wondering, well, this is good and all, but how do we actually make Heroku Connect do the syncing? And the beauty is Heroku Connect just works at the database level. We just save data to the Postgres database like you would in any other case. And as long as you put the data into the correct table, Heroku Connect will just automatically sync it. You don't actually have to do any additional work. So with that in mind, I think we would agree that Heroku Connect is really a pretty powerful tool. And in my opinion, it bridges a gap that used to exist in the Salesforce1 ecosystem. On one side of that gap, you had communities, which is single org focused, great for service sites, great for social product sites, and great really for any time you need to interact with Salesforce data or Chatter directly. And on the other side of that gap, you have Heroku, a very powerful global web application platform, allowing you to serve static pages, firmware updates, large files, allowing you to interact with non-Salesforce data easily. But it was always hard to get at that Salesforce data. You had to use something like the REST API, and there was more complication. But now with Heroku Connect, we can get direct access to that Salesforce data directly from our Heroku application. We can seamlessly sync data back to our Salesforce orgs. And as we just showed, you can actually seamlessly sync data back to as many Salesforce orgs as you want with very little configuration and very little work on your part. And it's just point and click configurable. So when you want to add new integrations, new objects, new fields, go into the interface, add them. And the best part is you can export the configuration from your first Heroku Connect instance and import that same configuration across every other instance you have, making a deploy for an integration go down from a few weeks to just maybe an hour and a half and waiting for those tables to sync. And when you combine all this, you can truly create powerful customer experiences, which will inevitably lead to powerful customer interactions. So on that note, we'd like to open it up to questions. And thanks for listening.
Nothing. Oh, yep. So the question is, how are the permissions set up? Are we operating under a single integration user in the Salesforce org or in the various Salesforce orgs?
So integrations are done with a single user. And generally, you'll assign a Heroku Connect integration user. But because they're a user, you can kind of wall them off with permissions and so on and so forth. But it is a single user. You're not doing it from your various accounts.
Another question. So the question is, what's the latency? How does the read-write process go?
So it's either evented or polling. Evented, in theory, should work immediately when you write that data to Postgres or immediately when you write to Salesforce. It should trigger a SOAP API call that pushes the data or pulls the data. I would not say that that is the safest route. I would always give it a few seconds. That's why, for example, with unified case, we have the ability to query for a case using the Rails ID, which is given immediately, or the Salesforce ID, which will be given once it syncs back and forth to Salesforce. But as you saw in the demo, when we created that case appeared within about a half a second within our Salesforce org. Yeah.
So the question is about exception handling.
So Heroku Connect, essentially, its interface is, it tells you we failed to write that data to Salesforce. That's essentially what it is. So the best way to handle exceptions is to take the required fields and either put them into your Rails model or to go to Postgres itself and make them required fields on that row. And then when you insert it, if you don't meet all the requirements, it won't fail. I mean, it'll fail at the database, not fail at Heroku Connect, because there's no real way to get that information out of Heroku Connect right now. But in the case of Heroku Connect kind of maybe falling over or going down over a period of time, all of the reads and writes are cached and checked, and when it comes back online, it'll push all those changes over.
Hey, when heads start rolling, you're like, oh man.
Yep. So the question's about data collisions. So I think, do you want to handle that?
To an extent, it's kind of what I just said. The idea, of course, is that these are transactional databases underneath it. So it's going to take the most recent read or write. Because our ShapeBite app is actually running on the Postgres server, the latency there is very small. On the Salesforce side, if you're evented, it should be pretty instantaneous. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. At least we haven't seen it, and we've done a few large deploys with it.
I can't hear. Okay.
Schemas and Postgres.
Okay, the data model
Database.
changes. How does it flow to the various schemas in Postgres?
So if your Salesforce data model changes, what you need to do is go back into Heroku Connect, and you need to essentially just refresh the list of columns and reselect the columns you are using, click continue, and then it will resync and rebuild the tables for you. So that is a manual step right now. Nope.
I can't hear him. Could you come up here?
Come to the mic, please, if you have a question. Thank you.
Just asking if you have tutorials and documentation on building that case.
So great question. So we are considering open sourcing this. The reason that we're hesitating a little bit is because a lot of the code base was used as inspiration for an internal product and also for a customer. So we're abstracting that, and I think we'll be able to open source at least a portion of the code base.
Yeah, that is our goal, or at least some documentation around how you can actually set up this multi-org syncing.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions? Heroku Connect's available today. It's GA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's GA. Heroku Connect's GA.
You can't add it through the regular add-ons. You have to request permission to get it, and then they'll just give it to you, and the Heroku users can then add it on using the regular add-on interface.
You'll have to ask Heroku. I mean, from our context, Heroku, it's GA. So.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions. First one is, can we sync custom objects? The second question is, are there any performance concerns related to like polling or having real time? And what is the data volume limitations around the synchronization?
So the first question was about custom objects, right? So you absolutely can use any object available in your org, and
It'll sync any field.
Right.
As far as limitations when it comes to polling versus evented, it really comes down to your API limitations. So the big thing to understand is evented is always going to use the SOAP API because it's happening one record at a time. In the case of polling, if there are a large number of records, it'll switch to the batch API. So it's important to understand your org's API limitations before you choose which route you want to go.
And to address the question about data volume, so we were part of the Heroku Connect beta program, and the application that we built was processing millions of records with no problem.
Yeah.
So I saw you do the mappings between like Heroku and Salesforce, like use manually. Like, can you do it programmatically? Right? We try to build an application, right? You don't know.
Of course.
Yeah, you can do that.
So I don't believe there's an API exposed for that now, but you can export.
To my knowledge, yeah, there's no API exposed. Again, that's to my knowledge. But once you do the mapping in one org, you can then export that configuration and import it into any other.
And I would encourage you, I mean, to expose an API like that is probably, I mean, it's a great idea. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in using that, to definitely approach Heroku's product team. Because the more they hear that, the higher it goes on the priority list.
Well, where are the product?
I'm sure you can find them around. So
Okay, thanks.
they wear the hipster T-shirts. You'll see them. What's that?
They don't have it as of now.
Not that I know.
To our knowledge.
Anybody else?
So for the database in Postgres, is there a cost to that?
So that's a standard Heroku Postgres database. So there's
Okay.
several tiers of those, and Sam, I know you're really intimate with those tiers. So if you want to give some idea on cost.
Essentially, it all comes down to how many records you are using and how much cache you want. Costs off the top of my head range from $50 a month at the lowest and scale all the way up to, I think, about $6,000 a month if you want 60 gigs, terabyte of storage, and most importantly, encryption at rest. But again, definitely take a look. It's also important to understand whether you're buying them through the web application or through an AE.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your attentiveness and for all the great questions. And enjoy Dreamforce.